How's it going, everybody? This is Nick Melanshek, and welcome to my new YouTube channel. What better time than 15 years after the inception to make a channel? But I wanted to get my artwork out, and I wanted people to see how I do it, how I create my comic books. If you are not familiar with me, I am a self-publishing indie comic book creator, writer, artist of two series I have out now called White Cell Inoculation and my recent series Big Man Down. So yeah, today I just wanted to put out the first video of me talking all things making comics, how I go about writing them, creating them, everything that goes into making a comic book. I just wanted to put it out here and in a format where I'm talking over the video of me drawing. Because honestly, I have a tough time. For all those guys that make videos where they can talk while they draw, hats off. Because I have a tough time being able to draw and talk. I mean, when I start working, I kind of get tunnel vision. And being able to focus on, and then answering questions and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's impressive. So here, you're probably wondering what you're looking at. What am I drawing here, right? Well, let me explain first kind of the idea behind making this little video series or podcast. Is basically, I thought, what would people like to see me do in videos? So I thought, hey, I can do like fan art. Who doesn't love fan art? Draw some Batman. But and then I thought about it, and I'm like, I'm an indie creator. I've got my own characters that I really dig from all the stories that I write. And I thought, what kind of indie creator would I be if I'm not, working on my own stuff? So for videos that I make here, you'll see me do prints like this, like pinups, or sequential art too. But it's going to be all from like my projects, my books. So what are we looking at here? This is Val Raven the Dane. He is a character from my own series called Big Man Down. He is the Danish assassin, the Raven of the Slain. Goes by many names. But he is a popular character in that series. I've gotten some feedback from people that have been reading it, and they really dig this character, and I do too. So I thought he would be a good character to start off with. So what I'm doing is I'm talking over the recording, like I said before. So it's a good way, I think, for me to kind of like be comfortable and discuss, I guess what my approach is and how I go about doing it. And this part of the video here, I'm going in on the roughs, and I'm really trying to make sure that I have my rough line work, basically like the really early sketch stage. I don't know how many of you work digitally, but that's all I work in is digital. So that's what you're going to see. I switched over digitally at, I don't know, about 7 years ago. And I remember, I really wanted to try it out. And then once I first started with it, I was kind of shocked at how different it was. It felt a lot different. And I tried not to get too discouraged, so I just kind of kept at it. Because it doesn't feel like, pen on paper. It doesn't feel like that at all. It's a little bit different. I use a tablet. I use a Wacom, I think an Intuos tablet. So I draw like with the Wacom pen onto the tablet stylus. And yeah, it just doesn't feel like paper. But once you get used to it, then I like it more now than working with paper for a lot of reasons. I still love like traditional work. Like I love seeing other people's traditional work. I like watching people work with pen and paper and ink and all that. I do. But for me personally, I just did a complete transition over to digital, so that's all I work 100% now. There's just a lot of benefits for me. I like the speed that you can get working digitally. I mean, you'll see during this video of me drawing Val Raven here, all the adjustments that I make kind of like as I'm working, it saves so much time. It's really like you can fly through your thoughts. You know what I mean? Like when you're working with pen and paper, you see something, you're like, oh, I gotta fix. Maybe I'll come. Well, you could just do it really quick, and I really like that about it. I like how convenient and easy it is to make those adjustments. I mean, when you're working with programs like Photoshop, you're using layers, so there's no tracing paper, no light tables, no transferring artwork. You just turn on and off layers. You add as many as you want. You can add as many steps to the roughing process. I know guys that will put down blue line, and then they'll do a rough on that, and then they'll do kind of like a messy line work. So I mean, there's a lot of benefits to using digital media to make, like right here I'm making adjustments, and I've been making adjustments the whole time. Um, I think it helps as an artist too because you can be more confident because you know that you can make those changes so easily. When I'm like framing out a figure, I don't have to obsess when I'm laying down that framework and make sure everything is in the perfect position because I know that like I can pull out, I can look at it, and I could be like, you know what, the posture's all wrong or the arm needs to be moved. So like in this rough stage, you can do that. You can like chop it up and like take the pieces and move them around, make the adjustments until you got like that form. Because a lot of times when you're going in to the drawing, you don't always know exactly how you want the pose to be or whatever. So being able to tinker like that and shift things around, I mean, you can't do that traditionally. I mean, you could get scissors and cut things out, I guess, or whatever, but like you have an arm, you can cut that arm out and move it. So I just really prefer working digitally, and it's like it's hard to go back now. See, right now I'm coming in with the my line work layer. So sometimes I name them, sometimes I don't name my layers. If you're looking at my layers right now, so this is the line layer, and again, I mean, you can look at my style. If you've seen any of my work, you can see that my style is trying to think of uh, a positive way of describing the fact that I don't make sure every line is like really perfect. It's a bit more of a reactionary style of illustrating, I would say. And you're gonna see here, I get really annoyed because I'm trying to get the left eye, that damn left eye. I get really frustrated here because I don't. It feels when I'm drawing the left eye to match the right, and it feels like I'm drawing with the left hand. It just don't feel. I cannot get that left eye, and and what happens is I get in this like kind of I go in a circles over it, and I'm like it's crap, and then I get rid of it. It's crap, and then sometimes the eye's probably fine, but I'm just like in this weird loop. So I'll either like sometimes I'll copy and paste the one eye kind of and use that as like a guide. I'll do that right now, and and sometimes that works. But honestly, people's eyes aren't exactly the same. They're not always in the same position in real life. A lot of times one eye sits a little lower, one eye looks a little different. And also when you're making facial expressions, your eyes aren't doing the same things. So it doesn't always work, but yeah, so what was I talking? Oh yeah, the my style is a little bit kind of loose. It's very expressive. It's kind of how I'm comfortable working. um I just like working reactionary instead of very controlled. It's something that I developed, I think, when I transitioned to digital, to be honest, because I mean I grew up learning the clean line work, uh, you know, style. Like artists like who, like Jim Lee or um, a lot of the image books when I was growing up, they had a very nice, clean style. I want to say Mark Silverstreet, but his style is a little bit. He's got a little bit of like expressionism in his too. So when I switched over to digital, I realized that it felt so different. The tools are different. Uh, it's a little less controlled than you would have if you're working with a pencil, sharp pencil on paper. And so I kind of developed a new style in a way because I was like, I was determined to get the digital art to work for me. So I ended up developing a new style that was able to work, which is a very scratchy, kind of rough style. And then I realized how much fun I was having working in that style. And it's not for everybody, and I understand because a lot of people really prefer clean lines. But there's a lot of people out there, like myself, that really like that more organic, kind of expressionistic style of art. Something that doesn't look like everything else, something that stands out. And that's how I feel that my work is like. I like to think that anyway. So switching digitally did do that for me. And I think that if you're going in and you're trying out working with a pen tablet and you're going digital, that be open-minded. So you might have to make some kind of changes or adaptations so that you can work in a different media. I mean, it's a different media. It's like if you were to go and work in ink wash or something, you have to make, you have to, accommodate the new style and what it is. So Val Raven the Dane, I really like him. Like I said, he's the Danish assassin. He only uses knives, and he's highly skilled. In the story that it takes place in, called Big Man Down, he's one of the top 3 assassins and hitmen in the city of Yokohama, where the story takes place. But he is easily the most dangerous of the 3. He's younger, and he's highly trained. He's got a really cool look, and I really like drawing him. I like putting him in the story. He doesn't say a whole lot, but his visual presence, I think does a lot for him when you're reading the story. He's interesting. So let's see here. I've got a couple of questions that people have asked me, and I thought this would be a good place to answer some of them. So one of the things that I get a lot is, do you use reference a lot? And the answer is pretty much sometimes I use it. Most of the time I don't. Most of the time I just rough it out. But difficult positions or strain, or like close up on like hands, I will shoot my own photo reference. I found browsing the internet works for very, very specific things, and even then, sometimes it doesn't really pay off, like Googling images. Because for me, I never find images that it's doing what I want. So I shoot my own photo references if I need them, and I just use my laptop. I work everything from a small MacBook laptop, and on the laptop, it's got like a photo booth. It's a handy camera right on the computer, and I use that for like hand shots or sometimes like a really strong perspective or something like that. I will do it, and I mean that works great. Problem though, see, if you're kind of a guy that's like super fit though, and you can use yourself as reference, and it works great, you know. You see, but if you got like a little bit of a gut and you're doing something, you're bending over, and you need to know where the hell abs go, that doesn't, you're coming up with a lot of that on your own. So, but yes, photo reference when working on comics is a great thing. There are times where every artist has to use it. You can't know everything. You can't have seen everything. So, I try to not use, because I find too, like if you use reference, there's a right way and a wrong way to use reference though. That's what I think. Because you can't just trace over something and then like make the changes. I mean you can, but I feel like if you do that, it clashes against your other artwork in the book. So if you're working on a comic book and you got your sequentials up and everything's you you're working from memory, and you use a strong reference photo, and you basically kind of copy it, it'll stand out. It ain't gonna look like your stuff. So if you use it the right way, and you kind of just are using it as a guide, and you're doing your own stuff around it, I think that's the way to go. I think it's the better way to do it. You don't really, because you want to keep that unique style. And I know it's probably sacrilege for a lot of artists. They're like, you gotta reference, and you should when you're really lost. See, what I'll do is I'll give it like a go, maybe two, and if it's just not happening, I gotta find pictures online or reference it myself. Because one, it can take a lot of time finding that perfect picture. So sometimes I'll see what I can do from memory, and I think that if you can get it to look the way you want it to look, go for it. But if you have something that has to be uh, to an exact, like if you're referencing something, then absolutely. I mean, yeah, if you're doing a book that's like a period book where like you were, the ancient Rome, then you're going to be needed to referencing that stuff. But when you're creating your own world and stuff like that, I believe the more that you use your own imagination and your own creativity, the more original and unique the stuff will be. Okay, I think that's how. I mean, you should always be inspired by things you see, but trust your creativity. See what you come up with, and work off of that. All right, let's get into it here. Let's see what I'm at. The stage. I'm still wrapping up the line work, I think, right here. And for the line work, I just go in with kind of like it's a flat brush on an angle. It's got like a tilted kind of thing. Because sometimes traditionally I'll use, they're called parallel pens. If you work traditionally and you want to try something new that you haven't maybe heard of yet, look into parallel pens. They're really cool. It's like almost like a quill pen or like a calligraphy brush, but it's real flat. It's called a parallel pen, and they're affordable. So it's similar to that. I wish I could find something that's a little bit more effective in Photoshop. I've yet to come up with that right brush, but I still like the look of using this instead of just the traditional regular round. And that's the brush choice that I use for this stage, though. Once the lines are done in this book that I'm working on, I've been going around all the important characters or whatever objects or subjects that have to be the center of attention. I'll do an outline on that, and with that, I'll use a normal round brush for like a nice hard outline to make the images pop or to again draw focus to it. Once that phase is done, I call that all like the line art phase. I move on to what I call the rendering phase. Oh, yeah, I remember this. I did all of that without saving. I think I was so focused on making this video, I didn't even create a save file for this. So that's interesting. Where was I? Yeah, the rendering stage. Yeah, that's what's gonna come up. That's where I add a lot of different brushes I use, splatter effects, lighting. I do more of the shading, rendering, and also color fills. This is the first book that I've done that I've kind of done flats. I mean, everybody has their favorite part of making comics. Flats are probably the bottom of the list for me. It's laborious work, uh, and it's got to get done though. If you're doing the colors and you're doing it in a traditional way, you got to do your flats. So I do the flats in this book, but this is the book that I'm working at now, because now I'm mixing things up. This Big Man Down is basically being wrapped up, and I did not do flats in this book. This is like it's mostly on white paper, but I do a lot of like black and grayscale brush effects. But I believe that the way I do this print, though, I'm doing it in the art style that I'm doing my current book, which is I do use flats. So I'll have to keep an eye out for that. Right now, I'm moving on to blacks. Yes. But anyway, so I love working in black and white. I've always liked black and white. I like the look. I remember being, younger and looking up artists' ink works, and I just so was like mesmerized with line work and like all the different um, techniques they use, to create depth and stuff, like even like cross hatching or all that different, line work they do. So I've always liked black and white work. I still like colored stuff, but I can tell you this: I'm not a colorist. If I'm being honest, I'm not. It's a totally different skill set. It's a different ability, and it takes a lot of skill to be a colorist. Just every part of making a comic book, it takes skill. But when you're self-publishing your own stuff, and you're trying to do it all, you work to your strengths. I prefer the look of black and white, and I like working in black and white. So all my books are black and white. And so far, I haven't done a project where I feel like color it has to be needed. I mean, this book here, Big Man Down, that he's a part of, it's like a modern noir. So the black and white works great. The first series I did, White Cell Inoculation, I used what I call a color treatment because it wasn't like a rendered coloring. It was color treated. I used a monochromatic color scheme. I used a lot of like blues, greens. Sometimes if I was doing like the villains, I was using almost like a bronze or an orange. And I would go in and use the color splashes but it was all like one color, and it was different shades of the same color, and it was a really cool effect. I get a lot of people they dig it because it's something different. So I think it depends on the book. The book I'm currently working on right now, that's the one that I'm using the flats. It's a grayscale, but by using flats and really like knocking out this, doing this character and then doing the background and giving it a full color fill, even though it's on the grayscale, it is a drastic different look to it than my other stuff. Excuse me. So it's interesting. The plenty of like there's so many different ways you can go about finishing up your comic. Like whether you go with color, black and white. Like when people say black and white, nowadays there's so many ways to do that. Usually with ink washes is a common way now, which looks great. Watercolor, people do traditional with Copics. They've been using black and whites. On Instagram, there's a lot of brilliant artists out there that use like one color treatment, and so it's like a black and white, but they'll put like it'll be one color with it. So red is a common one, and it looks great. I really like it. So, I mean, when it's your book, make it how you like it. Make it so where you think it looks cool. That's it. Even your characters, when you're coming up with your characters, you just kind of do the stuff that you're inspired by. My first series was heavily inspired by my love for the Metal Gear Solid video game series. So the art was inspired by it. The story's not so much like the series, but the art is definitely inspired by that series. Artist by the name of Yoji Shinkawa. He is the concept artist for the Metal Gear Solid video games. And it blew my mind forever. He's an incredible artist. If you guys aren't familiar with him, look him up. His name is Yoji Shinkawa, and he is unique. His style is so interesting. It's so dynamic. Like everything he does looks like it's in motion. It's such beautiful work. And so that was the inspiration for an entire series for me. So that is often what happens. This Val Raven the Dane, this book, Big Man Down, that was inspired by. I really got into the John Wick movies. I was like, this is all. I mean, I've always liked action movies, but over the years, comic book movies kind of have like stepped in and took that kind of job over. And so it's been a while since I've like enjoyed just kind of a regular action movie. So when I seen John Wick, I really was like, yeah, this is it. So it was an inspiration for the book. Now the story's not at all like it, but you can still be, you just are inspired by it. Something about the style or the tone or the character. So definitely just find inspiration and run with it and see what happens. If you're trying to come up with a story, or if you're making comics. Like if you're making comics and you're listening to this and you're in the middle of trying to figure out how to make your comic and all that, and you really want to get that first book done, like you haven't got one of your books done, and it's hard to stay focused and all that. I mean, I've been there and I know what it's like, and I gotta tell you, you gotta just kind of hunker down and get it done. I think it all depends. A lot of people, there's obstacles that they don't really realize are in their way. I know for me, when I was doing it, it took me about, I think I had like about 4 or 5 attempts before I even got issue 1 of White Cell Inoculation done finished. And they were all different stories. They were all different styles. I was experimenting so much. That's what it is. It was a fear, a little bit of, since I didn't know what I was doing, I wanted to make sure it was done right, and it was holding me back, I think. It was holding me back from, one, having fun, and then two, sticking with it and getting things done. Because I know with the first book I did, I got like 3 pages in. And at the time, 3 pages was an achievement. It was a big deal. And I got those 3 pages done. I just didn't feel good about them. And at the time, I should have realized, this is good. This is like I'm working towards something here. I'm learning a little bit as I go. I didn't think that at the time. I was like, this is crap. And what am I going to do? Am I going to keep doing this? Am I going to keep trying? Because I've been drawing my whole life, just like, many listeners. But I didn't start really making comic books until about 2015. But in 2013 is when I started trying. And it was I was discouraged a lot because I knew what I wanted to do and it wasn't coming out. It took me a while to realize that like it's all about experimenting and then just like putting the stuff down, like putting the work and getting it done. And then even if it sucks, saying who cares and just keep going. Once you do that, I think that's a huge part of really getting it done. Because I see so many artists, like I'm on a lot of the Facebook groups, and there's so many good Facebook groups. What the How to Draw Comic Facebook group is so good. It's ran by a dude named Clayton Barton, and he's awesome, and he's a crazy good artist himself, and he's a really nice guy. He runs the howtodrawcomics.com, or I'm sorry, the howtodrawcomics.net website, where he has like classes and stuff. I did a podcast for him one time. He's got a How to Draw Comics podcast, and I mean that's a great source of information for people that make comics. But anyway, in these groups, there's all these great artists, and they do a lot of great pinup work, and they do a lot of they should put up their practice work and all that, and they want to make comics, but they haven't started with like the sequential page work yet. And that was me for a while. Like I would do pinups. I do a lot of fan art. I draw like my favorite comic book characters, and I get good feedback. But deep down, it's not what I wanted. I wanted to make comic books. So at some point, I just decided to do it. And I think a lot of people are in that same boat where they draw well, but they haven't really dug in to telling stories with sequential art. They haven't really taken on that beast, because it is a beast. It's a totally different animal. Well, 2 animal references there. But it's true, and it takes a different skill set. I think there's incredible artists out there, like, some of those guys that do the digital painting works, and man, do they kill it. I mean, it's the most beautiful artwork. They do, like, fan art for movies and stuff, and it's just, like, that's so awesome. But they can't do sequential work, because it's, one, they might not want to do it, but two, it's totally different. It's a totally different skill set. And so I had to really learn how to do it. And for the most part, I'm self-taught. Like I learned the Photoshop and Adobe softwares. I learned that in school. I took some courses, even in high school. I took a college, I took some college classes on Photoshop, commercial art, and all that. And that's how I learned to use Photoshop. And that's also what like kind of reinvigorated my passion for art and stuff. So I recommend if you're like kind of like, oh, find a class that teaches you commercial art, and you'll learn the programs, and you'll learn something new. You'll learn a really valuable skill of like creating like logos and creating advertisements if you decided you want to be a comic artist. So definitely do that. But you got to learn this new skill of telling stories. And my best advice I can give you is just go for it. Just do it. Just who cares? Just do it. Don't worry about if it looks good. Just do it, and get something done. And then if you don't like it, okay, fine, and then start something new. I mean, I'm just saying that's like what I did, and it worked. It worked for me, and it's not going to work for everybody, obviously, but for someone that was struggling, it worked for me. And I think just saying, you know what, I'm going to try it and go for it, and then looking at the results and saying, well, I could take this away. This is a pretty cool thing. You know, this came out right. But you learn a lot. Like I'll have to post like some of my first pages. Recently on Facebook, I posted some of my early work for I think 2013, and then something I did recently. And there's a big difference, and everyone was really nice about it. I got great feedback, and they're like, such a big improvement. I'm like, well, yeah, when you don't know what you're doing at all, and then you just keep practicing, and you'll see the results, and they're going to be kind of dramatic because it is hard to just draw comics when you're just starting. It's hard. There's a lot of different little tricks and things. That's what's cool about comics, though. To be honest, you can make comics like any way you want. Really, it's just a visual storytelling medium. I mean, you can make little like cartoons, like the Cyanide Happiness stuff, or you can go as far as you be like Alex Ross out there, like hand painting things and stuff. So tell comics how you want, and keep that in mind while you're working on them, and have fun with it. And then the next thing you know, you got something to show for it. And once you have that, then you can kind of like, then you have a little more, you're giving yourself more confidence once you have something done. All right, so here we go. Like I'm getting closer to wrapping this guy up here. This is into the rendering stage. This is where I use a lot of the different brushes that are at my disposal. I got lighting effects, I got smoke effects. A lot of it is playing around with it, experimenting on what you think would look right, which is what I think you should be doing anytime you're making art. I think you should be experimenting, trying something new. Even on a page, a sequential page, I usually try to go around 5 panels per page, and then I vary from that, to mix it up. But usually, on average, it's about 5 panels per page, and every page that I do, I try to make at least one of those panels. I try to do something that I haven't done before. I mean, purposely, like I go in and I try to like do something creative, use a different tool, use a different perspective, camera angle, whatever it is. And I feel like that's just a great way to stay kind of like on your toes, and it humbles you because you try to do something maybe pretty dynamic or crazy, and then you look at it and you're like, oh, and then you got to fix it. You got to stick it out until it's done. So experimenting is a good skill. It's a good training skill, and it kind of keeps you fresh. Playing it safe all the time, it'll show. People are going to see that it's the same stuff kind of repeated. So, I mean, that's kind of why I approach each project I do. I purposely try to like do it in a different style. Like it's still my work, but I try to purposely make it something different, is where it stands out as a different style. So, talking about making comics again, another useful tip that I think could help. I think there was like a hump that I had to get over when it came to making comics, or even just drawing. And once I got over that hump, I was like, oh. And what it was, even since I was a kid, when I would be working on something like a drawing, within the first like 10 seconds or something, I almost felt like this is going to be crap. I'd crumple it up and throw it. Or, if I'm working digitally, I could say, what the hell is this? And I just trash it and start over. And I don't think that's the way to do it. I don't think it's a good way to go, because once I stopped doing that, I had like this totally different kind of outlook on when drawing. And what I mean is, just if you're gonna start something, see it out and see what happens. And I forgot where I heard that from, but basically, yeah, like you draw and you're like, what am I going with this? Just see what happens. I've had some of the coolest looking art that I've ever done because I just decided to stick it out. So I want to pass that along because I think that was a epiphany for me. Really, is just stick it out. You know, what's the worst that happens? You're confronted with challenges when you do that. When you don't initially see how it could work, giving yourself the ability to like improvise and just work through it. It's kind of like sculpting or something. You got the hunk of clay and then you start smacking it around. Well, you might have to do that with your drawing, smack it around a bit. Get it, and then next thing you know, you're like, oh wait, this might be able to work, and you didn't give up on it, and now you have this piece that was like, there's some subconscious, unintention in there that ended up being like really cool. So definitely don't give up on the art when you start it. Just see what happens. That's what I would say. That works good for when I'm doing panels too. Like I'll put down a rough, and the rough, I know a lot of you guys already know, like the roughs always, for the most part, they look great. And then you start doing like that final line work, and you're like, what the hell happened? Something about the roughs always like they look awesome. I think it's because it's less information, so like your brain does more of the heavy lifting on it, and you see it for what it could be. You're like, that's awesome. And then you start putting all that clean line in, and now it really narrows in the options of how you interpret what you're looking at, and you're forced to see it in the way, so you don't. Your brain is like, no, that don't look right. That's what I think anyway. Where was I going with this? Uh, so yeah. Oh yeah, don't just yeah, keep going. Don't give up on it for sure. Let's see how much time we got left in this video. Okay, well, right now I'm just cleaning it up. I'm going in. I'll start adding some light effects. It's probably like the fun part. It's definitely like the icing on the cake. The light you'll see in this print of him. I'll go in on the last layer and it'll do like lighting effects, and it's where I bring out the whites, and I have so much fun doing that, and I think it makes the artwork pop for me. I've had a lot of people comment. I've got some good compliments on it, and I love hearing that people dig it because again, it's a lot of it like experimentation and playing around with the tools, uh, and it's just a lot of fun. I'm pretty meticulous about like how I approach making comics. Like if I'm working on a sequential page or even this, I have my steps that I always stick to because I have to have it kind of like a system down. But when I'm in towards the end, it's like a free for all, man. I just start like, and I don't know if a lot of you guys are that way. If you are, you should like let me know because I'm curious. I just go in and I see things. I have like maybe it's my short attention span or whatever it is, but I jump around like sporadic, and it's just the way I do it. I've tried to like be more controlled. Oh, here's the lighting effects that I go with. It's just the soft brush, kind of like an airbrush with white. Sometimes I'll go in and put it in screen mode if I'm using color or whatever. But where was it? Yeah, the chaotic, hectic finishing that I have. Yeah, that's why I like to show it because people ask like, okay, well, how did you do this? I was like, I don't know. I don't know how I did it. Towards the end, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. It's very kind of like when I was talking earlier about how I just get into like a zone when I draw it and I couldn't be able to answer questions and all that. When I'm at this stage, I mean, you could be shouting at me and it's like I can't hear you. I just go into like this weird like I need to pull it all together. It's like the finishing touch. You pull it all together. So yeah, guys, if you guys want to make comic books, man, just go for it. That's just if you're the artist, just make them. Just make them. And if you're like, I don't have a script or I don't write, fine. But you're gonna have to learn how to tell stories. You're gonna have to like. I don't really consider myself a full-on writer. I tell stories. I've always been able to do that. And in comics, it's visual storytelling. And yeah, you gotta write and all that, and those are the battles that I take on. But when you're an artist, you gotta tell visual stories. Or you won't be a successful artist, comic book artist, if you can't visually tell stories. So without a script, you can still tell a visual story. You got think of something up. Think of anything. A squirrel going and getting a nut and bringing it up a tree is a story. Draw that. Draw whatever. And then that's how you're going to learn all the things it takes to illustrate comic books. The pacing, it's your foot in the door. It's your foot in the door. I learned a lot from other artists though, and join them groups online. The How to Draw Comics group I really highly recommend if you're looking to draw comics. It's like an near infinite resource pool of all different levels of artists, from beginners to pro, and it's just so much valuable goodness there. And I've learned stuff by asking questions. Do that. I wrote Freddie E. Williams. He's a writer, an illustrator. He's done recently. I think he's done some stuff on the Ninja Turtles Batman crossover at DC. He's put a book out, digital. I think making comics digitally or creating comics digitally out of DC Comics too. It's like a book, which I would recommend if you're looking at like starting working digitally. But anyway, I messaged him, showed him some of my really early work, and a little tidbit of info he gave me was awesome. He was explaining like the camera and how to use the camera, things not and like what not to do. You can't swing the camera around like 360 degrees in the middle of a scene. It's like he's like, look at it as if you're doing a play, and you can move the camera around like that in a half circle, or we call it like a half circle, but don't go behind the backdrop, and you can't don't angle your camera from that side. And if you do, it's got to be transitioned over. So ask questions, and that's how you find things out. There are like kind of like secrets of the trade. I'm not one to follow every rule. I'm not one to follow everything that everyone says you're supposed to do. I used to be, but I've grown. I think I've evolved into. I do what works for me, because when it comes to getting yourself to get the job done, you got to do what works for you. So anyway, guys, this video is wrapping up. I really want to thank you for listening. I hope you dig it. This is the first video that I'm doing, and I plan to do more, especially if you guys like them. I'll show more like sequential art and storytelling. I think that'll be helpful. So yeah, this is Val Raven the Dane. This is him finishing him up. It's a fun little pinup piece. I did this piece specifically for these videos. I thought, that's a great way to start it off. So I had a lot of fun talking. I want them to be kind of like this, like laid back, relaxed kind of discussions. I think they could be more helpful. They're almost like podcast format, because I don't really edit too much the videos and stuff. So again, thanks for watching. If you want to see more, subscribe to this channel, and I'll be putting some more work up. Hopefully I get some good feedback, and give me some questions. I'll be happy to answer some questions for the next video. That'd be great. Okay, guys, thanks a lot. This is Nick Melanshek from Talking Over Making Comics, and I'll see you next time.